This is the Free Zone Communiqué, transmitting from Virginia's unoccupied sector. If you think smart cities, DEI, censorship, government intrusion, bug paste, and other left-wing nonsense are no longer a possibility, think again. We've won one election with slim majorities. Our work to rebuild a free and sane America has just begun.
Welcome to the Free Zone Communique. I'm your host, Matt Jordan, bringing hope to victims trapped behind the wire in blue cities. Today, we have a really good guest coming on. His name is John Matthews. He's been here before. He's one of my favorite guests. He's an author in the UK. He has several books out. He has two under the name of Matisse, Maettis, the Vienna Writers Circle, and the Fortune Tellers of Berlin. I did a review of the Writers Circle a long time ago, but I'm going to review Fortune Tellers of Berlin next. I don't know when. I always have like 3 or 4 books open at any given time, but I will try to get to that very soon. In the meantime, let's get on with it. Joining me now is John Matthews. He's an author in England. Become a good friend of mine. We talk a lot. And of all the people I know who have been tracking the Israel-Gaza situation, the Middle East in general, John has his finger on the pulse better than most people. He produces more stuff than I do. And I'm pretty much at my desk 24/7. So, John, it's good to have you. How you doing today?
I'm fine, yes, very good. Very good. Mixed weather here. We've had a heat wave and now it's cooled off a little bit, but there we are.
Yeah, we're having erratic weather here. We get mega hot, thunderstorms, cool days, and back to the cycle.
Yeah.
You guys getting any flooding over there? Any summer storm?
Not a lot. There was a couple of very small thunderstorms, but no flooding. Where we are, we're on the side, we're in a valley, but we're on the sort of quarter of the way up the hill of the part of the valley. So any heavy water flows right past us and goes down the hill and then down another hill. So the lowest point is actually about a mile away from us, or more than a mile. So we're not we're quite away from a flood zone. So but anyway, we've had a bit of heavy rain. We had a very strong heat wave. So
yeah, well, it's summer. You have a pool, right?
we do, yeah, we do. We've emptied it and we're just finishing. We haven't cleaned it and everything. It's just finishing filling up now.
So you got a heat wave going and your pool's on the fritz. That's bad timing.
Yeah. It got too green and there was too many solids in it. We had to empty it, so that was it.
Yeah, well, I had a weird morning to catch everybody up. I pulled John in late. I thought I was off to a good start. I had myself some Taylor pork roll. Some of the godless heathens over here call it Taylor ham, but to me, that's the best way to start your day. You know, Taylor pork roll and some eggs. Do you get to the U.S.? Have you been over to the U.S. recently?
Yeah, well, not recently. I lived in Western Canada with my wife almost 3 years in Vancouver, and then on the way back we thought, well, we've been to Seattle a few times because it's the closest place from Vancouver, and we thought, well, we're not going to see the States again for a while, so we caught a train down to LA. And San Francisco first of all, then LA, and then El Paso and New Orleans, and did the whole route.
Yeah, you saw a good area of the West. Yeah, that's good.
It was like a 6-day train journey, and stopped off a day in San Francisco, and we had an afternoon in Los Angeles, and an evening in Los Angeles, and then another day in New Orleans. So. Then we came to New York.
I'll have to get you over to the East Coast. I'll take you up to Philly. And
all right.
Introduce you to cheesesteaks and hoagies and Taylors and Habersets.
All right.
Please hang up and try again.
At the bottom of the page, I'll leave links where you can find all our stuff. Wherever you get to P4B in the Free Zone, please follow, subscribe, leave reviews and comments. And share, share, share. This is how we grow. I'll leave a link to where you can support the P4B directly so you too can be a political party pooper. But the most pleasure you can get by supporting us is to shop Po River. I'll leave samples and links for that as well. Thanks to all our supporters and subscribers. Well, listen, man, I have been pulling my hair out. I don't have your command of the subject. And let me preface this way. I have a hard time being objective when I talk about the Middle East and Middle East war and Islamic fundamentalism. I'm not one of those guys who look at 9/11 philosophically.
No.
The day filled me with hate every time the anniversary comes around and they blow up the airwaves with documentaries. Yeah. I don't come away with a greater understanding of what happened. I come away with hate in my heart.
Yeah.
I have no desire to understand or forgive.
Yeah.
And I think that may cloud my thinking sometimes. I don't know.
No, I think it's a strange thing, the sort of Arab world and what led to the sort of fundamentalism that then led to 9/11. And sometimes when you get the sort of heavy sort of reaction that did happen after 9/11 with the war in Afghanistan, which was justified. The war in Iraq, there was always questions about it because they said, well, Saddam Hussein wasn't really involved in 9/11, but he was a brutal dictator, so there was always questions on it. But the thing is that it's almost as if they respect strength. So, unless you go in, I mean, it's the left-wing liberals are more on the, they're sort of saying, oh, God, what are you doing? You're bombing these poor people and all the rest of it. But in the Middle East, they're sort of saying, the ones sitting on the sidelines, Saudi, were also saying, yeah, you're doing the right thing. Because Saudi, where bin Laden came from, originally,
right, that's correct.
They've suffered from enormous sort of extremism. And I was reading just the other week that it's reached the stage that because Al Jazeera is always promoting the Palestinian side, is almost sort of taking a soft edge with the terrorists. Hamas aren't so bad. They're the good guys. They're the freedom fighters. The Arab states have had enough of them. And so Al Jazeera is now banned in Saudi, the UAE, in Bahrain. So all of the major Gulf states, except for Qatar, where it's actually funding and founded Al Jazeera, banned Al Jazeera because they've had enough of this supporting of jihadism and extremism. So it seems strange, when you have the Gulf states taking that line, that we don't ban them as well, because of course that comes in with the free press. Oh, you can't ban, But the thing is, it's such a one-way voice that they're always supporting or making excuses for Hamas. They're always criticizing Israel. And I think the problem is, as well, is that a lot of the Al Jazeera, the only journalists actually in Gaza are from Al Jazeera. And then the other ones are stringers who are Palestinians. And if they don't toe the Hamas line, the best that can happen is they'll be banned from the territory. Right. And never be able to report there again, which would then cut them off from their family, whatever. That's the best that can happen. The worst is a quick bullet through the head. So, of course, they do the sensible thing for them in Gaza, and they just follow the Hamas line. Right. The BBC don't have journalists in there. They blame Israel for not letting them in. But the fact is, you can't have loose journalists roaming around a war zone. landmines and the IEDs. As you know, it's just too dangerous. You can go in guided by the IDF, but then they feel that they're not doing their job fighting the war. They're just becoming tour guides for journalists. So it's very restricted. So you get this sort of one-way news. And as I was saying coming back to the point about this aid crisis, is that all the news we're getting about people being shot by aid depots, and I would say that 99% of it is false. And Mike Huckabee, the US ambassador, actually came out with it, which is unusual for a US ambassador, and said, look, these news reports, they're totally false. And it's leading to problems. And, one of the problems he cited was the two embassy staff that were killed.
That's been a problem. That's been a problem since the beginning.
Yeah.
Gaza would release a statistic, 50,000 people killed in a bombing. And the press would blare it out, big headlines.
Yeah.
And 2 months later, when you finally couldn't keep the lie alive anymore, the press would quietly, on page 25 below the fold, retract the story. And when you get into a discussion with a common knucklehead on Facebook, he's still quoting the original headline.
Yeah.
Because he didn't read the 3-paragraph retraction.
Yes, they just latch on
the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, they latch on to these terms because it sort of suits the agenda. It's almost as if there's a ready audience of people now that want to hate Israel, that want to believe the worst about them. When I started, journalism, it wasn't the case. Israel was very much favoured. University students in the UK and in the States used to go and spend summer breaks on a kibbutz. Israel was seen as the underdog because, of course, 5 Arab states were, against it. But it all changed as soon as the Arab states pulled out and left the Palestinians on their own, and they became sort of freedom fighters. The sympathies changed, but there was an enormous amount of publicity in the background. Going back to the aid situation, when I wrote the thing about motive, to me it made no sense. Israel 100% supports the new aid initiative, GHF, so it made no sense. Why would they shoot at people collecting aid from a distribution organisation that they 100% support? Whereas on the other side, Hamas are 100% against this new initiative because it bypasses their skimming operation. They're skimming 30% off of everything through the UN.
The food, the tools, the supplies, the money.
Everything.
Those guys that sit their fat asses in Qatar are billionaires.
I know.
Money came from prostitution, drugs, and gambling. Yes, they do that in the Middle East. And all the aid packages. They skim the aid packages. That's how they became billionaires. That's how Yasser Arafat, the Egyptian, became a wealthy Palestinian.
I know. I mean, they've been skimming. So they're trying to stop the skimming operation by having a new aid thing. And of course, there's enormous pressure against it. But what gets you is that the BBC and CNN and Associated Press, it's almost like they're in on it with Hamas, because all they're doing is reporting the Hamas line, oh, there was 60 people killed today. No, there wasn't. There might have been 3 people killed, and not by the IDF. It was mainly by Hamas at another center somewhere else, some other.
Just happened again the other day.
Yeah, I mean, they killed 15 GHF aid workers, and that's sort of been recorded by GHF, but that doesn't go into the mainstream news. So the only thing we're getting from the mainstream news, is this sort of false reporting. I think it's got to the stage, and I was thinking of actually approaching the Israeli embassy in London and then it would go back to Israel itself, saying, look, I think it's gone so far with organizations like the BBC that you are going to have to sue them and think of a figure that will actually deter them. 3 billion, 5 billion, just think of a figure and go for it. Get a very large, prominent law firm in London to pursue the case, because it's not as if it's not as if they're doing this without knowing that the information is false. They've been told by Mike Huckabee, they've been told by the GHF aid workers themselves, look, this did not happen, and still they're reporting it. Now they're reporting last night, oh, look at all these people starving. And I'm thinking, no, because where the photos are coming from, I don't think it's even Gaza. But it works out that something like 62,000 truckloads of aid have gone into Gaza in the last 19 months. And for a population of 2 million. In Sudan, you've got 50 million people, and they've received a quarter of the number of trucks going in. For 50 million.
Right.
So they do have a real famine. And it's almost annoying, because you think, well, the attention that should be on Sudan for a real famine is getting sucked away by the Gazans for saying, look, we're starving. And then with that amount of aid going in there, and that it's just a false, it's a false claim. I mean, one of the last Hamas guys that was they targeted and killed, there was a picture of him before he died, and he was about 30 pounds heavier than previous pictures of him, because of course you're stuck in a tunnel, you're not doing much exercise, and you're eating as much sort of food as you can. And that's been some of them have, ridiculously bloated.
If you're Hamas, you're well fed.
Yeah, they're well fed.
Everything you need. And if you're not Hamas, you are extorted or you starve. Is how it pretty much works out. And people want to put that on Israel's shoulders.
Yeah, I know.
Israel is fighting a war. I remember, when we were getting ready to go into Germany, how we sent all those aid trucks in first, and warnings and, help people to evacuate before we attack them.
Yeah.
I'm being tongue in cheek, but I'm sure there's 20-year-olds who think that actually happens in a war. Israel's bent over backwards.
I know.
To give escape corridors, warning pamphlets, flooding the internet with warnings.
I know they dropped.
I mean, you're talking about giant semi-trucks.
Yeah.
Goofball Greta Thumbskull went down there in her yacht with her aid. She had enough aid to fill maybe a bread truck, and that was going to be a big contribution.
Yeah, I think it was about a third of one truck or something. Yeah. And it was just a very pathetic sort of propaganda. So, but that's the other thing with, on propaganda, they say, oh, children are starving. And then the next thing you see is they put up a propaganda photo of a very chubby, well-fed 8-year-old in full combat gear holding an AK-47 that on the black market costs about $3,000 and would feed a whole family in Gaza for a year. So you think to yourself, hold it, have you thought of not having any of these 8-year-olds with AK-47s and feeding everyone in Gaza?
Well, that ties back to something you said earlier. The lunatics and nutbags in Lebanon learned a lot in the 70s and 80s. In the 70s and 80s, they were the same type of nutbag we're dealing with now, but they started to realize that being a little bit pragmatic, a little bit cooperative, not being utterly uncivilized, they could have a slightly better life. And as a result, they get support. Hezbollah got a lot of support from Iran. They don't They're not constantly doing battle with their neighbors. They're not walled off.
Yeah.
Well, the Palestinians of the Hamas flavor didn't seem to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
That's why they are treated today the way all Arab states treated all Palestinians prior to the 70s.
Yeah.
They didn't want them around. And even today, every one of the countries that we're talking about are saying, yes, we support the Palestinians so long as they stay way over there and don't
Yeah.
come anywhere near us. Because we don't want that kind of headache daily
Yeah.
in our streets.
Yeah. I mean, the dilemma was particularly sharp in Ireland. Ireland has been very, very anti-Israel. And they said, oh, yes, and they said, well, okay, you support the Palestinians, you feel so sorry for them, take X number of Palestinians. So suddenly they paused. The Irish said, oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then what happened is, at the time this was happening, there's been mass demonstrations in Ireland against immigrants. They've had, hotels where immigrants were staying half burned down. They've had riots in Dublin. There's been riots near Belfast as well in the Northern Ireland. And basically, the message from the Irish people is not only don't we want any Palestinians here, we don't want any Muslim immigrants at all. And this came about. I mean, the press try and play it down. They say, "Oh, this is just a bunch of right-wing extremists." But when you watch GB News, who are sort of give you the sort of bare truth about it, they say no, this wasn't just one attempted knifing with a young girl that sparked it. What's happened is that girls in that area, and this was in Northern Ireland, they found that they can't walk safely from the main high street where there's nightlife and pubs to their homes because they get harassed by the immigrants
Constantly.
and
Yeah.
and harassed and the women get women walk the female immigrants spit on them because they see them as a sort of a woman without a head covering. So it's almost as if there's been this sort of clique of immigrants that are extreme and are either trying to harass the women and they're worried about getting groomed and raped. And so it's been building up. And then you had this knife attack, and that was it. So I think any Irish PM would have a lot of trouble convincing the Irish public. I mean, if he did make a move and said, right, we're going to take 1,000 Palestinians, even 1,000, which is nothing compared to 2 million, they'd lose the next election. And they're aware of that.
Yeah. The talk that Trump, and I think in this case, this is Trump initiating a crazy conversation in order to settle for something less.
Yeah.
Talked about completely rebuilding Gaza to be the new Beirut, the new jewel of the Mediterranean, which it could have been anyway. They could have done that by now.
Yeah, they could have if they'd concentrated on not trying to kill Jews and Israelis. Yeah.
Yeah, but in order to do that, you'd had to park a couple million Palestinians somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because that rubble has to go. People are not going to be able to live in the areas where the rebuilding is being done. There's too much hazardous material. You've got cubic miles and miles of concrete that has to be torn up from all the tunnels. It's a tremendous amount of work. But it was a great conversation starter to say,
yeah, I mean, it's a good idea.
Yeah. And it also put the Middle East, the entire Middle East, on the spot to state publicly whether they will take Palestinians or not.
Yeah.
And that says a lot about how much they really give a shit about Palestinians, which isn't much.
I know.
You know?
I mean, the whole war, I mean, there's a push to have the war ended. but they need to precede that with the statement that the hostages must be returned.
Yeah.
And unconditionally return the hostage. Basically, they should have said from the start,
Yeah.
return the hostages. We're not going to give you any prisoners in exchange. Return the hostages, and then we'll talk about the day after.
Whether or not you live, to see the
about whether we continue the war or not. But while you've got this, and I think one thing that hit me the other day that has never been said on the news is that, I mean, this was the second largest sort of civilian massacre after 9/11. It's
Right.
the second. There's never been that number of people killed in a single day at any time, in a terrorist attack. But it hit the number one spot in terms of the number of hostages. There has never been a mass kidnapping and hostage taking on that scale. I mean, I remember there was a few in the Lebanon years ago. There was a hostage crisis in Iran, but I think it was maybe 30 people in an embassy. And so there's been hostage takings and crises, but you've never had 260 people, whatever it was, all grabbed at one time and held for ransom.
The Nigerian lunatics are pretty good at it. Nigerians have over time kidnapped thousands, but I don't think they ever pulled off 150 in one go.
No, I know.
And if people talk about genocide, that Israel's trying to commit genocide. If they wanted to commit genocide, or if they just wanted to execute a war as war has been done up until today, there would be no Gaza left. The hostages would have been returned or they'd be dead. The show would be over. And if they wanted all the Gazans dead, all the Gazans would be dead right now.
Yeah.
So this leads to something I was going to mention. You wrote about it the other day. The media, the press and electronic media, kissing Gaza's ass, asking these people who have caused the problem, who are feeding the problem, for permission to cover them in a way that they approve of. The Italian press. Tell me about that. You wrote about it the other day.
Oh yes, well that happened in that was the Ramallah lynching. And what happened is there was an Italian station, RAI, I think it was, and they actually filmed the lynching. And this is where there was two off-duty reservists had gone into Ramallah, had wandered in there by mistake. I mean, I think they were lost or whatever, and saying, "Oh, wait a minute!" But before they could get out, they were grabbed, and they were taken to the police station. And I think there was some questioning whereby, what are you doing? As if they were maybe spies, And but the thing was, they weren't just reservists who'd gone in there by. But this is a sort of also highlights, I mean, how dangerous it is. You go into the wrong area in the West Bank, and this can happen. Anyway, what happened is a mob broke into the police station and grabbed these reservists and literally pummeled and tore them apart. And there was pictures of a couple of young Palestinians who, they're literally holding up a torn off arm of one of these and bloodied hands, and this was filmed by this RAI television. And what happened is, because there was a couple of other cameramen there as well. I think there was one from CNN and some other. They had their cameras taken off them and destroyed, and RAE managed to get out from this mob, and they released this footage. And because they released this footage, they were banned from ever reporting on the Palestinian territories or situation again. So what happened is they then wrote a groveling letter of apology of, I'm sorry that we we did this, and it was one lone cameraman, and it's not reflective of our news service.
God.
So this then showed that they're almost sort of saying, it set the tone for everything that followed, because it was almost as if, if we don't follow the Palestinian life, if we ever dare show you in a negative light, we'll be banned from ever reporting. So again, this gives you a one-way street with reporting. And we see it today. We see it now with, these claims of Gazans starving, people being shot while they get aid. And I mean, that's why I came up with the motive thing, because to me, it made no sense, because there was no motive there for the Israelis to do it. Hamas have an enormous motive. And, maybe it's something that I have an eye on more strongly, because, alongside writing as a journalist, I write thrillers. And of course, they're mostly crime thrillers. And the essence with a crime thriller is that, if I wrote, a crime plot and the murderer had absolutely no motive or no connection with the victim, the readers would think, what's this rubbish, and throw it aside in disgust. So, of course, I do focus on motive. And I think, well, hold it. What is Israel's motive for doing that? And there is no motive. And, of course, you then see the GHF reports and they say, no, there's no shooting taking place. Mike Huckabee comes out, says the same. GB News have said the same, Fox News, but it's all of the right wing. But the left wing, the mainstream media, are still stuck in this sort of, groove of always supporting the Hamas line.
They have the same mental deficiency as Western governments seem to have right now. And that is attacking their problem from a position of weakness.
Yeah.
Some reporters covered something objectively. Boom, we got the pictures out. Done. That's their job. The people who want good copy, who want to be popular, then beg the offenders, please forgive us, we'll do whatever you say. Instead of looking at the strength they have, they can embed with the Israelis. Start covering it. Cover it wall to wall. Show every detail you possibly can. And then the people in Gaza, as they did at the beginning of the war, will say, all right, wait a minute. We need to let these guys in.
Yeah.
And at least let some truth leak out. Otherwise, we have no outlet at all. Just deny them their goddamn megaphone.
Yeah.
But the Western media is so frightened and so well cowed. They're so used to getting their talking points every morning and regurgitating them.
Yeah.
That not only do they not know how to pursue a story, they're afraid to.
That's right. They're afraid to portray I did an article just that went out this morning called Victimhood. And it talks about the fact that the Palestinians always need to be portrayed as the victim, no matter what they've done. So even after October 7th, there was very little, sympathy for Israel was very short-lived, because only 5 days later, you had a massive demonstration on behalf of the Palestinians, and even Hamas banners waved. 5 days after they've had this enormous massacre, and there'd been no reprisal. Israel was still trying to get its act together of, well, what are we going to do? And they were moving a few troops on the border, but there wasn't a single soldier in Gaza at that stage. So, you had the likes of Francesca Albanese, who's the UN rapporteur for, and she came out with this quote straight after October 7th. Oh, this violence needs to be put in context. She said, because the military occupation of a civilian population over 60 years is an aggression in itself. And I put in the article, I said, well, of course, that is made nonsense of. Albanese has kind of made nonsense of the fact that it's not due to occupation or military control, but a lack of it. Because if in 2005 Israel had stayed in Gaza, there would have been no 300 miles of tunnels built. There would have been no stockpile of rockets. There'd have been no civil war between Hamas and Fatah. And then as a result, there would have been no October 7th and no war.
Israel
Yeah.
fought and arrested their own people to create the Gaza arrangement that you saw prior to 10/7.
Yeah.
Those people had 15 years, more than that, almost 20 years, 17 years,
Yeah.
I think, to get their act together, learn how to be civilized, learn how to be a small nation state, and they could have taken advantage of that
Yeah.
on a scale that hasn't been seen in a long time. There was no occupation.
No, they weren't there. Israel were, they were the other side of the fence, and that was it.
Yep. Only months before 10/7, the fat rich bastards living in Qatar were talking about how well Gaza's doing and how peaceful they are and how there's no aggression whatsoever anymore. We're going to be peaceable. While he was saying that, while the words were coming out of his mouth, they were already planning 10/7. It's a repeat of Japanese and Pearl Harbor, make peace while we're getting ready to punch them right in the face.
Yeah.
It's really pathetic.
I know, it's a sort of it's become almost a tactic that they say the opposite it's always an inversion of the truth and reality. I mean, everything they do, they sort of invert it and blame it on the Israelis. I mean, I was astounded to see there's a report. I mean, there's been a report that's come out that actually categorically shows what Hamas did on October the 7th in terms of rape and sexual mutilation and whatever. So it's a very considered report. There's lots of testimony. But now we see an Arab report saying that the IDF are guilty of raping, that they're using the war in Gaza to rape women. And
Right.
I'm thinking, no. I mean, it's almost as if we've been accused of it. I mean, maybe what's hitting the Hamas is, if we were in that situation with those women and had control of it, we'd have raped them. So they're thinking, because we would have raped them, the IDF must have done it. So they come out with a report. But the thing is, when you read the report, there's very little substance to it. There isn't the same sort of eyewitness statements and testimony. Or what happens is, when they boil it down, they call it sexual abuse because they've been asked to remove items of clothing to show that they're not carrying a bomb or a weapon.
Right.
So they suddenly say, because you asked me to remove items from my clothing and I'm a Muslim, that is sexual abuse.
Yeah, tantamount to rape. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's tantamount to rape.
I'll allow this. First of all, the whole thing of, Israel rapes too. That's a standard lefty Hillary Clinton tactic. Blame the other side for the things you're doing. That inoculates everyone to whatever news comes out.
Yeah.
But in every single military organization, I say this to people all the time, American soldiers are heroes. And I say, well, generally speaking, but not all of them. There's always a scumbag in every unit, or a couple of them. Is it possible that some of the rear echelon guys, you take over an area and now they're responsible to police it, may have abused their position and raped women? I would not be shocked at all. But to accuse Israel of the same kind of systematic, hideous crappy, uncivilized, subhuman behavior that we saw on 10/7, any objective observer would look at that and say, no, that's not true. It didn't happen,
No.
because Israel is a civilized nation. Whatever faults you may have, the nation may have, they're not wide-eyed, constant headache rapists,
I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I'm sure there are a few rogue soldiers that have done the things that they shouldn't have done. They've been trigger happy. I mean, there was a thing put by Caitlin Johnson, who is I would be being very kind to her if I said that she was a nutcase. That was probably her main credential. She used to be a mystic, and she's suddenly gone into this thing of, I can go from mysticism into criticizing Israel. She's got quite a big audience, but she put up a YouTube thing of some Israeli soldiers holding up undergarments that they'd found in Gaza, and one of the soldiers holding a bra in front of himself and smiling, and obviously, now, yeah, okay, that was probably very, very unwise and very tasteless to do that.
Yeah, that was
But
my
it
word.
wasn't. But she then puts the caption of it, "Oh, look at the systematic sexual abuse of the Gazan population by the Israeli soldiers." So she's gone from, a simple bit of foolish, playing around with women's underwear, which they shouldn't have done, and it is to be condemned. But it's not, it's not rape. It's not, I mean, otherwise you sort of every stag party there was, if the cameras got in there, you think, oh my God, look at all this sexual abuse of, people holding up women's underwear that's going on.
To equate that with rape, or insinuate that indicates a rape has occurred, cheapens the actual
That's right.
trauma that rape actually is. And every time you do that in any context, this context, a civilian case of rape, whenever you minimize it or exploit it, you make it that much harder for every woman who's ever been raped
to
pursue it. Because you desensitize the public, you desensitize potential jurors, and defense counsel, who will say absolutely anything to get their guy off.
Yeah.
But I want to widen this a little bit. I want to take the problem what we have with fundamentalism and general hatred for the West, and talk about Europe and the United States. What's happening right now? I worry. I've said it. You've heard me say it. At the UK, the sand is pit-pat in the hourglass. It's getting very, very close to the Islamic Republic of the British Isles.
Yeah, I think it is bad in some zones. I mean, if you go to the Midlands, Leicester, and then the north of England, Bradford is particularly bad. I think Bradford has got a 45% Muslim population, which is very, very high.
Yeah.
And I think Leicester is sort of 38%, something like that. Again, it's very high. And even cities like Leeds have a high. The bombers for 7/7, with the tubes there, they all came from Leeds, so they were British born, but they'd been sort of radicalized while they were here, and I think this is another thing. There is a sort of a large Muslim population who could be radicalized and have been. We've got a number of them. We had these ISIS. They nicknamed them the Beatles because they had sort of mop hairdos, who were executioners for ISIS, who were British, who've gone over there. We've still got a case with this Jemima Begum, who she wants to come back to Britain. Please forgive me. I didn't know what I was doing. I was only 16. she was married to an ISIS commander, and they won't let her back in. And so there is this sort of radical Muslim contingent that can be very worrying. I mean, I will say that where I live in Surrey, it's not such a problem. I mean, you do have problems in pockets of London, which is only 10 miles away.
Yeah.
But generally, they they don't have control by any means. I mean, if you went to my local pub and you walked in there with a Palestinian flag, you'd probably, get thrown out with the flagpole stuck up your bum. They wouldn't put up with it. And if you took a poll, you'd find that 70% of them were in support of Israel. But that's not uncommon for. I could pick, a dozen pubs in the county of Surrey, which is one of the largest counties in the southeast of England, near London. And again, that would be that would be the consensus. There's no sympathy for radical Islam at all. And
throughout Europe, that seems to be a similar case, but it's the population centers, the power centers, where not only Muslims but immigrants, especially recent immigrants, piling in. London isn't 40% Islamic, but it's 40% foreign immigrant. And an amazing number of them are quite recent foreign immigrants.
Yeah.
LA, New York, Brussels, Paris, Stockholm, they all pile into massive ghettoized neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And the power emerges from there, and the politicians have let them. Now, in the United States, that's representative numbers. That's the way our system works. They want these cities packed nut to butt with every illegal they can find. And Muslim, Hispanic, Eastern European, they don't care.
Yeah.
And they don't care what it does to their city. All they care about is when the census comes around, they're going to get more representation, because right now we're required to count the sons of bitches. But I don't know if that's the same in Europe, if power evokes from numbers in the same way, or in England.
It does, yes. I mean, the Labour government, which is now in power the last year for the first time for years. I think its last Labour government was Tony Blair. So suddenly they've got back in with Keir Starmer. But what they've done is they're changing the voting rules. So now they're going through Parliament and will be approved, is the fact that when the voting age was 18, they're lowering it to 16. Now, they've done that because they think, most young people usually are more left-wing and they'll vote Labour. And so they've done it to sort of try and stay in power. So it's interesting how they're playing this numbers game with young people. I mean, the crowd that we saw at Glastonbury, predominantly young people shouting along with, I've forgotten their name now, the Bob Dylan, death to the IDF, then they all go, death to the IDF, and you think, well, this is very worrying if this is what young people in general think. But then when you see and there was a lot of Palestinian flags waving in that crowd when they were performing. But then later, when you had Rod Stewart on, you had more of a mixed stage. So you had a lot of young people, but you had middle-aged and some elderly people as well, and they're really enjoying it. Not a single Palestinian flag in sight. Scottish, English, Welsh, whatever, and
all those triggers.
Yeah, and so you do get this thing where the young people. But they did a poll the other day, and I was surprised because I thought, well, this is Labour's move to stay in power. And the poll was that in the 16 to 18 band, 42% said they'd vote Labour, but 34% said they'd vote Reform, which is the new sort of right wing party. And then it went down, the Greens and whatever, and the Conservatives were quite low. I think there was only 18% were going to vote Conservative. So the Conservatives would be losing out from that, but it could bolster Reform, and some Labour people would then, and of course, Reform are terribly anti-immigration.
Well, in a very professional way and in much more detail, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I think if Keir Starmer is counting on the youngins, he may find himself disappointed. And I do believe outside of activists and people actually living in universities,
Yeah.
even some of the middle-aged people are getting pretty damn sick of what's going on around them. People who were once reliably labor or reliably in this country left aren't as reliable anymore because they're tired of stepping over poop in the streets and stepping over people so strung out they look like they're in a coma on a sidewalk.
I know.
Tent cities in nice neighborhoods in the cities. These people are starting to think, they're starting to say, wait a damn minute. Now, the conservatives can't point the finger entirely at labor because this occurred while the conservatives were still around. You know, this trend. And they learned way too late. But I think a lot of the young people actually kind of get a kick out of Nigel.
Yeah. I think the problem is with the young is that they're very idealistic and they support whoever they see as an underdog. So, maybe they equate to underdogs. So to think, oh, well, I'm young and I've got no power and I'm dependent on my parents and, I have to get student loans and this, that, and the other. And they feel very powerless. So when they see somebody, camping out on the streets and they're a new immigrant or whatever, they go, oh, I feel sorry for them. They're like me. They're powerless. They've got no money and status. So I think there is this thing amongst the young, but it gradually changes because as they they get into life, they realize that there has to be a structure to society, and the strange thing is that what we see at Glastonbury and with the street demonstrations, they did a poll on GB News and 74% were against the street demonstrations for Palestine and 68 or 69% on the Sky poll. So it shows you that the Glastonbury and the street demos are not representative of the general population at all. And that's why Boris Johnson got in years ago. And yet at Glastonbury, they were all shouting for Jeremy Corbyn, oh Jeremy, and at the same thing they were calling F Boris, Stormzy, F Boris, and he thought, well, wait a minute, based on that, Boris Johnson's got no chance. And when it came to the voting, it was a landslide victory for Boris Johnson over Jeremy Corbyn, and Jeremy Corbyn, he built a lot of it on an anti-Israel ticket as well. And then, of course, all the excuses came out. Oh, I only lost because Mossad got involved in the Israeli lobby, and but it was a bit of a ridiculous excuse because how on earth were the Israeli lobby going to sort of mind bend the British population? I mean, they wouldn't have been able to do that unless they involved Uri Geller. Uri Geller bent everyone's brains, so they we must vote for Boris.
How familiar are you with Craig McKinley?
With who? Sorry?
Craig McKinley, I think you guys call him. Lord Craig McKinley. He was an MP, now he's House of Lords. He's a quad amputee.
Yeah, I'm not up on it. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, he was on the show a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And he was the number one man at Brexit for a while. Number one, he went over to Reform Party and UKIP, the actual
Okay.
party behind Brexit. He and Nigel Farage worked together for a long time.
Oh, right.
And
Okay.
now they're kind of on the outs a little bit, which is a bummer.
Yeah, yeah.
I got to talk to Craig and tell him you got to bridge that gap. You got to fix that. But um, he was an interesting guest, and we talked about a lot of the same things you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
If you had a macro vision on how to fix this, I'll not put too much pressure on you, but what would you do?
I want to fix the divide in reform or
With
fix
no,
in
with
general.
the general degradation of the city streets in England and across Europe.
Well, the funny thing is that when you mention the tent cities, we don't, certainly in Surrey where I live, we don't have that. We don't have people living on the streets in tents at all, and that's true in London as well. Now I don't know about the Midlands and North of England. I don't think it happens there. I mean, we tend to spoil the immigrants. We tend to, you know, as soon as they appear on the streets and whatever, we tend to stick them in four-star hotels.
Hotel, yeah.
And until they get burnt down by right-wing extremists, that is, but protesting about it. No, but I mean they do tend to sort of you don't have this sort of living on. I mean, and that happens in Ireland because this apparently there's 67 Palestinian refugees who went over to Ireland thinking, oh, they're going to be sympathetic to us. You know, look how nice they are to us in Ireland. Oh, let's go over there. They went over there. Those 67, practically all of them are living in tents on the street. So it happens in Ireland.
Yeah.
And I think that's Southern Ireland, strange enough, which is part of the EU. But we haven't seen that in the UK. But we do have these sort of Islamic almost not ghettos, but there's a lot of social housing here. So you've got something like 16 to 18% social housing. And of course, a lot of immigrants have filled those social housing gaps.
Right.
And you get areas like Tower Hamlets, which is a very, very heavy sort of Islamic population in London. And, when the October 7th came and there was Jewish people were going around in London and putting pictures of hostages on lampposts, and they were being torn down by this mob from Tower Hamlets. Now, to me, they should have filmed all of those people, and I wouldn't have mucked around. I'd have said you get 3 years for that, 3 years in prison for because it's sort of. Yes, I mean the hostages should be released. Why tear down a poster that's sort of announcing something quite innocent?
If the posters are put up with the city's blessing, they become a public notice. You can't mess with public notices. That and you don't have the homelessness that we have, which is good. In New York City, we don't have a lot of the homelessness. I think the homeless in New York City are drug addicts and schizos. Not too many of them immigrants. The immigrants, like you said, are being put up in the Roosevelt Hotel. You know, nice things if you can find them. And but that doesn't stop them from committing crime on a grand scale. Say what you want about the immigrant that came over 15 years ago and immediately went to work as a plumber and a drywaller or whatever, and he's a good guy. That's terrific. That's swell.
Yeah.
The majority of the fighting age young men, 90% of the people who came over in the last 4 years, are not the salt of the earth.
Yeah.
They're not good people, and they are creating problems. And I know your cities are having the same problems.
Yeah.
But there's no will. There doesn't seem to be a will to round them up and ship them back.
Now, you won't get, unfortunately, that will in the UK because, I mean, particularly in London, you've got Sadiq Khan as the lead, and he was asked on a chat program, now we've finally got a grooming gang sort of national inquiry. There's going to be, the national inquiry into the whole grooming gang scandal.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, are we now going to get an inquiry in London to sort of focus on, because we hear that there's problems in London with grooming gangs. And he said, oh, well, what exactly are you getting at? And she said, well, I think I've been very clear. The grooming gang needs to investigate it. Oh, well, are you insinuating this? He went round the houses 5 or 6 times and he would not commit to it. And he was almost sort of saying, oh, well, I think you're just scaremongering here against the Muslim population in general, and I'm going to have no part of that. I mean, so the thing is that any sort of grooming gangs that were operating in Rotherham or wherever, they'd think to themselves, oh, look, even if they aren't active in London, and I think they are from what I hear, they would say, oh, let's go down to London and, groom, have our grooming there, because Sadiq Khan is going to be very sympathetic. There's never going to be a police pressure or an inquiry on us.
If you permit something, you'll get more of it. If you don't fight something, you're going to get more of it.
Yeah.
And if you subsidize it, you'll get more of it. If you put up immigrants in hotels, you're going to get more coming to your city.
Yeah.
But my worry, and the reason I've been talking to a lot of Brits recently, the reason I brought you back on and spoke to Craig is we're only about a year and a half behind you guys in terms of this trend.
Yeah.
You already have individual cases of immigrants who will rape a girl and not see the problem in it. When you arrest them, they're really like, "You serious that you're going to get mad at me for this?" They're not going to ask your daughter, "Are you LGBTQ? Did you support Hamas in the last time?" They're just going to rape her, or they're going to kill her. And I worry that it's going to become an organized thing here, as it was that you guys had to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, it's still going on, I'm sure. But I mean, there was this sort of feedback from the people that were arrested, and they were saying, "Oh yes, we don't know what the fuss is about." It's almost as if in their own countries, in Pakistan, they have enormous abuse of women, and it's not seen as abuse. It's sort of, oh, that's the way you treat women. You subjugate them. If they step out of line, you hit them. And if they're loose with their morals, if they wear a short dress or whatever, you rape them.
And it's worse for infidel women.
That's probably why
has a worse problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably why they're all covered up, because they sort of know their own people and go, oh, if we're not covered up, and they'd almost blame the woman. Oh, well, you weren't covered up properly, therefore it was my duty to rape you. And that's probably an extreme expression of it, but I think the trouble is that they did, and they admitted that the girls that they targeted, they said, oh, they were loose with their morals anyway, and they were wearing short skirts, and they were inviting, men to be with them.
The civilized world did away with that argument a long time ago.
Yeah.
We people in this century,
Yeah, but they're still clinging to this. But I think the trouble is that they're clinging to something that's hundreds of years old, unfortunately, and they're using this to to justify. They don't know why there was such a fuss about it. And then the underage thing, I think they marry cousins at the age of 14 legally in Pakistan. So they're probably thinking, well, what's wrong? I married my 14-year-old cousin, and when I was fed up with her, I married another cousin who was, when she got to her 14th birthday. And so they don't see anything wrong. But they would not, they were strangely enough not attack their own, and they said this, that they left their own community alone. They did not target Muslim women.
And in some cases, there's an imam telling them that's okay. Leave the girls in your neighborhood alone. You go out there amongst the infidel and do whatever you want. You know, that's what these kids hear. When you bring a culture en masse into your culture in a short amount of time, where you don't have time to explain, listen, this is how we do things here. You know, these are the things you can and cannot do. So that if they bring their brother or their cousin or their drywalling partner over, he explains to him, now remember how we used to treat women back home? We can't do that now. We can't do that in England. It wasn't that transition where it allowed people to try to assimilate and try to behave like civilized human beings. These people were denied that. Denied might be too strong a term. They didn't get that because they came over in a horde. You know, and that's what we've been experiencing, and not just with Muslims, obviously, but with cultures from all around the world, 120 some countries, sending millions of people in with no inkling as to what they were coming to.
Yeah, I know. I mean, they almost you almost feel that they would need a questionnaire. You know, I think in Australia they do have a questionnaire. Maybe we should have had the same here and the same in the States. Of, you know, okay, you've arrived in the States. You know, what's your intention? If there was a war between America and or UK or conflict, you know, Pakistan, where would your allegiance be? In terms of your religion, where would your allegiance be? You know, and again, you know, if you had this sort of 20 or 30 point questionnaire about morals, their views on the West, you'd immediately say, no, I'm sorry, you can't come in here with that set of beliefs and moral convictions, because and that's it, you reject them. And you know, we have here the Home Office that lets people in or doesn't let them in. But of course, as soon as they say they're refugees from a war-torn nation, they're allowed to stay here, because the alternative is sending them back to a war-torn nation.
Do you remember when I talked about weakness, stealing from weakness? This is where your politicians and ours are letting us down on the refugee and asylum issue. If a refugee, a fighting age male who could stay home and fix problems, leaves Syria, we'll say, and travels to Turkey, his refugee days are over. His travel is done. According to all these treaties, we're told we have to respect. He goes to Turkey. He has his asylum. He has his refugee status. But you have people going from Turkey into Eastern Europe, into Central Europe, into France, and into England, and saying refugee, refugee, refugee. And out of weakness and out of corruption and just trying to guss up numbers and fix their demographics, the politicians are saying, oh, but we have to abide by the treaty. Abide by the treaty is no, go back to Turkey. Where your asylum is, you know? But the politicians, you can't even bring it up with them. You know, if you challenge a politician on that, he'll do what the mayor of London was doing. Oh, you know, you're just this way, you're just that way. How can we be so heartless? He'll bury you in snow lines instead of dealing with the issue.
No, I mean, I think the questionnaire, the one that they have in Australia, would help. But you're right. I mean, if they've come from Syria and they arrive in Turkey, that should be the end of their journey. I mean, the only thing would be if you set up sort of immigration embassies in Turkey to have a questionnaire and say, look, do you have any special skills that you could offer the UK or the USA? Now, if they were rocket scientists or heart surgeons or computer whiz kids, you'd think, well, okay, they've got, and they had the right sort of view of what they could offer, you'd let them in. Because yes, we don't have enough doctors and even nurses or whatever. There's a lot of skills that we do need here. I mean, now, strange enough, our NHS, National Health Service, you go into major hospitals here, and 40% of the staff are immigrants.
Yeah.
But they've come through a set process where they've got sort of nursing, passes, and they've done their medical exams, and you know, um, I mean the strange thing is I was 50. I'm 72 now, and I was 56 at the time, and I had a thing called an aneurysm, which is not to be recommended. Now you can have an aneurysm, a lower aneurysm, and it might not kill you. The chances of it killing you are 30%. But I had an upper level heart, which is the main tube going from the heart to the brain.
Right.
And my one had torn, and they had to fix it. And apparently I was wheeled in for an operation, emergency, because they said that's going to burst. And they said that tube is going to burst. It could be 3 hours. You might be lucky and it'll be 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But when it bursts, it's game over. So they had to operate. And it was a very, very high risk operation. I was 14 hours in the surgery. And I mean, I'm here because I survived it, but I was very lucky to survive it, because apparently the failure rate is something like 35%,
Right.
which is almost 20 times that of heart bypass surgery. So, but the surgeon, they had an English surgeon who was assisting called Lyon. He was English and quite elderly. He was mid-60s. But the one who did the main operation, his name was, they don't call them doctor when they're surgeons. They're called Mr. And his name was Mr. Sarsan. And he was from Iran. He came from Iran as a surgeon 20 years ago. And he was an expert surgeon. So it shows you that there are people from, I mean, he was from the old Shah, era, when they were actually sort of in favor with Israel. And, but yes, a lot of people left.
I'm 100% down with that.
Yeah.
Are you a surgeon? Are you an engineer?
Yeah.
Are you a technician beyond journeyman? Come on in. You got kids? You got little kids? Come on in. We need to fix our demographics too. Who else do you know that knows how to do things that can contribute and hire people to do jobs?
Yeah.
Come on in. But coming here with nothing to offer, no marketable skill, or a marketable skill that's a dime a dozen.
I know.
We're under no obligation, legally, morally, or ethically, to say, yeah, come in en masse, just keep coming.
Yeah. I know, because the thing is that we've got unemployment, you have in the States. And, when you've got X number of unemployed, you don't need to add to that. When you've already got, young people are unemployed, you don't need to sort of add to that burden. So it is a problem, and the radicalization. And it is a shame, because, of course, you get surgeons like Mr. Sarsam, and there was another sort of carer who took care of me. He was from Ghana, and he was Christian, and I know he's Christian because he wore his cross. And I remember he was leaning over taking care of me, and I said, "Oh, I see you're wearing a cross there." And he says, "I'm not meant to wear it." I think it was from Ghana or Nigeria, I'm not sure. And he says, "I'm not meant to wear it." He says, "But there's so many Muslims here." He says, "I like to feel proud to wear it, and I don't mind showing it to them." So he was sort of proud of his Christian background, and he was great. I mean, he sort of took me through a very, very rough period, and yeah, I mean, I went back to hospital and thanked them all, and they were very surprised I actually went back. I think they save a lot of people's lives, and they never go back and thank them. So when I went there, sort of, my goodness, it's Mr. Matthews has come back. You know, what are you doing here? I said, I've come back to thank you. I think I gave them a signed copy of my latest book or whatever, so they were very, very pleased with me.
What is your latest book?
Well, I did a series of two books under the name of J.C. Maetis, Maetis. One of them was called the Vienna Writers' Circle.
I have that one.
Yeah. And then the follow-up was the Fortune-Teller of Berlin, which has Fortune-Teller of Berlin. And the plot of that is a girl who's a fortune teller, and she was part of a group of fortune tellers, one of which in real life was Hitler's fortune teller way back in the early 30s. And guy Hanneson. And anyway, he was Jewish, strange enough. And what happened is he was killed by people very close to Hitler who thought, oh, he's got too much influence over Hitler. But the plot of the book is that he, as the war progresses, he feels he needs some guidance. And so he finds one of the main proteges of Hanneson, who's at that time in Paris, brings her with her family to Berlin. And so he asks her about her guidance on the war. You know, I could do this, I could do that. What do you see is the best thing for me to do? But into the plot, MI5 and which was SIS at the time, they latch onto her and they think we could use her to guide the war the way we want it to go.
Yeah.
So that Hitler thinks she's giving good advice, and in fact, she's going to be
not too far-fetched for MI5 and MI6 there.
Yeah. So yeah, and I mean, one of the biggest decisions was whether he should go to war with Stalin, who was actually on Hitler's side at one side, and that was one of the main things that made no sense. Why would he go against Stalin, which actually ended up dividing, you know, the whole thing with the Russian front,
right?
Was a main factor in Hitler losing. And I thought, well, wait a minute, what if it was guided by MI5 through, you know, military intelligence, through this fortune teller? But of course, she's walking a tightrope. You know, she's dealing with, you know, the most sort of maniacal, dangerous man in the world at the time, and hoping that her advice is seen as good advice, you know, rather than it being suspect. So it's yeah. So that was my last book.
I'll have to get that one. I will have links below the media line to John's Substack, and I'll pull up whatever books are out there. I'll put that in there.
Okay.
But we have spent an hour with one of my favorite British writers. And again, do check out his Substack if you want to get a feel for what's going on and a critique. I think a good, strong critique of the Israeli-Gaza situation. You definitely need to read John's Substack. You need to jump in there. Read my Substack,
okay,
too, but definitely see John's. With that, I'm going to cut you loose, John. It's been a great discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Obviously, from the tenor of our discussion, we only have about 5 million more things we can cover.
I know.
So you should
definitely. Well, just when I was coming on, I thought, what have we covered last time? And I might have nothing to cover. But of course, once we got into it, there was lots and lots to talk about. Yeah, it's very good. Thank you.
Well, last time we did talk about some of these things last time, but we talked about your books a lot and your bio and your philosophies. But I would love to have you back. I would love to have John Matthews as a regular thing.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay, brilliant. Well, it's been very good. Thank you very much. It's been great to visit you again, Matt.
It was good to have you. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I always like having John on. He's always a good guest. Has lots of information, and I encourage you to read his stuff, Substack and books. I just wanted to tie a knot in something we brought up earlier. We talked about aid going to Gaza. Now, aid does get to Gaza. I don't care what the media tells you, it goes to Gaza. And the people responsible for getting most of the aid to Gazans are the Israelis. It's significant because, number one, they're taking time out from prosecuting a war that is legitimate by any historical or ethical standards that we live by and have lived by for 1,000 years. And they have to take time out from that war to escort aid to the Gazans. An admirable thing to do. They don't have to do it. They're not morally bound to do it. Hamas started this damn war. If Hamas wants to take care of its people, they should do it, and they can't. They could if they had the money, the fat billionaires from Qatar who call themselves Hamas, cut loose with some of that money. But Israelis bring in the bulk of that aid, and they risked their lives when they escort that aid through Gaza. The convoys are attacked on the road or often at the endpoint, both as a means of skimming aid and a means of creating false propaganda against Israel. So I just wanted to make that point to tie up everything we discussed on that issue earlier in the show. Thanks for joining us. Please support the P4B and the Free Zone in any way you can. Share, like, subscribe, comment, and review. This is how we grow.
Please tell a friend about the Free Zone Communiqué. We live and die with the share and subscribe buttons. Please use affiliate and sponsor buttons to support our work. Thank you very much for joining us today.